my pleasure to speaking with Casey Lau today. Casey Lau is the Startup Hong Kong co-founder and also a comic book creator. Casey, how are you doing today?
Good, thank you for having me today.
Indeed, I know you've been doing startup for a few years.
Yes.
And I just know that you are familiar with this industry. And can you talk to our audience about what was your first job?
My first job in Hong Kong?
Yeah.
I studied graphic design. So I came to Hong Kong and I got a job as a designer when I first got here. This is doing apparel design. Yeah. So something I wasn't really familiar with, but it was a very good opportunity when I came to Hong Kong, so I took it. And I guess maybe a couple years after that, I really didn't like it. And but the internet started to become big, and so I shifted my design skill set to do web design. And then that's where it kind of grew, and that's where I've stayed since.
Coming from the creative background, and what's the biggest inspiration to create Startup Hong Kong?
The biggest inspiration in Startups Hong Kong? Well, basically, I can just kind of give you a background on what it was about. About 3 years ago, Cyberport had a venture capital forum, and they invited some investors from Silicon Valley to come to Hong Kong to talk about what was happening there. And one of the investors that came down, his name is Dave McClure. He's a very famous investor in the States, and he came down and did a great one-day conference there, talking about how startups do things in the States and how that ecosystem works. And basically, somebody asked him at the end of the conference, when you leave, what should we do in Hong Kong? And he said, basically, you should get together and meet in a coffee shop and just talk. And seems pretty obvious, right? But because he said that, a bunch of us got together and started doing that. And so we just met at a Starbucks or whatever, and just talked about our startups to each other. Because we were just 6 guys, we didn't know each other. We all met at that conference, and we were all at the beginning stages of a brand new startup. And that whole community grew from 6 people to today. We have about over 3,000 members now.
3,000? Yeah. It's a really huge number.
It's quite a big number, yeah.
And I know startup is a new business in Hong Kong. How do you get people to embrace new ideas?
How do you get people to embrace new idea from the startup? To get new ideas?
Yeah.
Well, they come. So we just a community, right? So we don't actually give anybody any ideas, and we don't do any investment or anything like that. We're basically what we call an ecosystem. So all around the world, in almost every city in the world that has a startups, will have an ecosystem, which is just startups getting together and talking, and meeting each other, networking, trading ideas, trading resources, things like that, right? So we think that for any city to survive, you need to have this in place, right? And this is not a government concept. This is not a school concept. This is probably a private individual concept. So that's what we did. This is all based on our spare time, just for fun kind of thing. That's why we spend at coffee shops and things like that. But we like to help people generate ideas by having things like Startup Weekend, where over the course of one weekend, 48 hours, you come up with ideas, you meet strangers, and you form teams, and at the end of the whole thing, you pitch a whole new business that you may or may not continue on with afterwards.
From the previous job as a graphic designer, and also right now as the co-founder of StartupsHK, do you encounter any problems at work, and how do you deal with it?
Problems at work?
Yeah.
I don't know, what kind of problems do you mean?
Some learning difficulty and communication different with colleagues, and also getting to work in a new place, a new environment.
All right, so that's maybe one of the things why people like to join startups is because they don't want to work in that kind of corporate environment. I'm getting along with hundreds of colleagues and things like that. So it's doing a startup, you usually do it with your friend or somebody you know that has the same kind of vision as you. And that's why I don't see a lot of those kind of issues, right? The only issues I see with colleagues is that a lot of my startup colleagues, they find it hard to hire new people in Hong Kong. That's the only thing I see as a challenge in this field right now, is that there's not enough new talent coming out of Hong Kong that can support startups. That means engineers, UX designers, anybody who knows social media, things like that. These are things that we find as a challenge. But I don't know much about any sort of colleague problems inside the workspace. Because when I worked at the company, you see that a lot. But with the startups, it's like everybody's so busy and has such a goal and a clear route of what they want to do. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of that. At least I don't see a lot of that.
And you also said about they also had the same vision, same goal in Hong Kong. But how's the difference with the Hong Kong startup and the overseas startup?
Oh, it's a difference between them? I don't think there's much difference between the two. It's just that I think that maybe overseas startups, like say from the States, they have a bit more of a broader perspective. Because people in the US, they like to travel, they like to see other cultures, like to see other things, right? I'm sure you know many people from the States come to Hong Kong and they're just like so impressed by Hong Kong. But we live here for so long, it's maybe not so impressive anymore, right? But when we go to like say Tokyo or we go to London, we're also very impressed by that thing, right? So I think that at least Hong Kong startups, maybe if they're very local and haven't traveled a lot, they have a very narrow view of the world, right? They just see Hong Kong as a main place, and they come up with ideas that are just suitable for Hong Kong but won't scale internationally. So I always find that as a little bit of a challenge. So as much as I can, when people come from out of town, I like to put those people in front of the local startups so they can see, you know, get some influence and some ideas and inspiration from overseas and other countries.
And I know you also have pitching and also give presentation on the stage every time.
Yeah.
How do you get comfort become speaking in the public, and also how to not afraid in the public?
Okay, well, okay, so yeah, I think that's a good question. A lot of people have a problem speaking in public, right? But when I was in high school, I took a lot of acting classes. So I've already that kind of outgoing personality, right? But I definitely think that one of the things is to take an acting class. So just recently, a famous Hollywood acting coach came to Hong Kong and held like 2-day conferences here, and a lot of the startups went to do it, and they came back thinking it was fantastic. Because it's not really about acting; it's about projecting yourself and showing confidence when you do talking, and being clear and concise and knowing what you want to say. That's, I think, a big thing. So even a startup, they need to know more than just what you would do in a normal job. You need to know how to do your business, how to do your skill set, and also as well how to present yourself.
You mentioned about attending the drama class in the high school, and which character is the most character you like? Like Batman, Iron Man?
Oh, what character from the comics? Oh, okay. Well, when I was growing up, I definitely liked the X-Men. Thought they were the coolest. You know, Wolverine, those guys, very cool. So since I've loved comics for a long time, they've changed a lot, right? Nowadays, the Avengers are the most popular ones. So Iron Man, everybody knows Iron Man and Captain America and those characters, right? But so it's changes all the time. So then that's a good way to look at things too, right? And no matter how popular something is, it'll always go down and something else will take its place, right? So you know, those characters. When Iron Man wasn't famous before the movie came out, right? He's not even a popular. Even in the comic, he's not popular. But now he's like the most popular character now, right? So it's really strange. Or it just cycles how things work. So it's interesting to look at that as a, you know, as kind of a mirror to like just life in general.
Did the character affect your life and affect your work?
Affect my work probably, because I don't pay attention enough to it and read too many comics. But affect my work, affect my life? Sure, yeah. I think so. I mean, I remember when I was growing up, my mom would let me buy comic books because she said that the vocabulary was good to learn. So you know, the English vocabulary they use is like they use bigger words than they would. And if I'm not going to read a book, then might as well read something. So a comic book was a good way to start reading, right? These are Western comic books, right? So there are a lot more words in it than say the Japanese comics, things like that, right? You know, I don't know. I think that when you read comics like, you know, Spider-Man, his story is very about great power and great responsibility. I think that when people read that when they're young, they take that into their lives as something, right? So, yeah.
I know some people in Hong Kong, they are also interested in doing startup. Can you give some experience or example? How can they do more better, or they can do best in Hong Kong?
Okay, well, most important thing I think in doing a startup in Hong Kong for any Hong Kong people is just to do it. That's number one thing, right? Because I think it takes a lot of strength and a lot of courage to go and do a startup. Because it is very safe to work in a company and get a salary and, you know, follow the rules and live your life like that, right? So if you really want to risk doing a lot of risk, then doing a startup is a big thing. So if you can get over that first hurdle and you're very passionate about what you want to do, not just because you think it's cool or you think it's something that everybody's doing, you want to do it as well. You have to find something really passionate about it. And I think if you are very passionate about something, other people will see it. And it will inspire people to join you and people to help you. And I think that's what we've done with StartupsHK, and all the startups in our group are all like that. If they have a very passionate company, they will go forward and a lot of people will support them. So that's the number one thing I think. Success rate is like a gambling. You can never tell for sure, right? But the idea is that as long as you tried it and you did it, you took a shot at it, I think it's the most important thing rather than not taking that shot at all.
So today, thank you for Casey spending time with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay.